All right. Well, good afternoon or good evening if you're in this side of the world in America. And if you're in the Pacific Rim, then it is wonderful Wednesday morning for you. And if you're in Europe, then you should be in bed. But if not, you're a night owl like me sometimes. I am Bruce, Mr. Simpler, Faster, Better, aka the guy in the blue shirt. And I have a company called Process Cleanup, and I help businesses become simpler, faster, and better. And I am so honored that Nat is here with me. So I'm going to throw it over to Nat, and thanks for being in blue as well. It's the boys in blue, Nat.
Thank you very much, Bruce. I felt like I had to go with the trend here and, play along.
Why not? You know, it's somebody said to me the other day, it's no mistake that LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Dell Computers, all of those big companies, they use this family of blue colors, right? So
exactly.
It's no accident.
A little brand marketing and research going into that?
Actually, what I learned about it, I learned about this color blue when I was in Dallas, Texas. And in Dallas, Texas, this color blue is a confident, calming color. And most of the attorneys wear this color blue when they go to court. So
interesting.
And I learned that from a marketing genius, a lady called Dee Dee Leahy, and she was the one that got me to wear my first ever bright blue shirt. So
very nice.
Yeah,
I like it.
Well, Gracie's on. So Gracie was the wonderful lady that actually nicknamed me the guy in the blue shirt. So thank you, Gracie. Always indebted. All right. So Nat, we're going to buzz around traditional marketing, some foundational stuff. And so take it away. And as you know, I'll probably interject with questions or welcome people as they come on the feed. So,
okay. Sounds great.
All right,
well, I guess I'll start with, giving everybody a little bit of my background. I am currently the principal for a company out of Scottsdale, Arizona called Vendara Group. Mm-hmm. And I have been in marketing for 40 years now, approximately.
Cool.
And it's been a long time.
So between us, we got 86 years in the biz. How about
there
that?
You go. There you go. And it's nice not to be the oldest guy on broadcast for a change.
Well, I'm only 28 in America, and I've only been here 28 years. So sorry, man.
I'm afraid to look at what I am in like dog years or something like that.
Sure, no problem.
But most of my career has been spent in the sports, entertainment, consumer products, and retail industries. I have been blessed to be able to work for companies like the National Basketball Association, NASCAR. I've worked for one of the top event production companies in the country. And I've been jumping in and out of my consulting business for approximately 20 years or so.
Wow.
Bulk of my experience is in brand marketing, brand strategy. I've been on the B2C side as well as the B2B side. Enjoy both. And, the biggest takeaway for me or the biggest, what gets my kind of juices going in the morning is I really enjoy helping people. Right. I love digging into their problems. I love coming up with simple solutions and, really helping them reach their goals and be successful, et cetera. So,
right. Well, in the warm-up, I said to you, there's always something common ground that comes out that I don't expect. And right. So I am an IndyCar, not whiz. I wish I was fast as Indy. I did drive at one time, but I used to crash a lot. So anyway, so I just came back from Texas Motor Speedway watching the Indy cars. And so it was funny because they were really publicizing the big NASCAR event that's going there between June 10 to June 22, because they're taking the trucks, the Busch Series, the National Series. So that, isn't it a small world? And that's where, funnily enough, talk about processes and looking at simpler, faster, better. I actually spent a lot of time filming little video shorts to do some tricks and tips to get people to realize that these racing car teams and these drivers are so skilled. It's unbelievable. They're
Oh,
the
it's incredible. It's funny you mentioned Texas. One of my a good friend of mine. Oh, I didn't tell my didn't turn my phone off.
That's all right. Hey, it's live, man. That's what happened.
One of my good friends and former colleague at the NBA is the assistant general manager at Texas Motor Speedway. Has been there 15 or 20 years now. And I know they've, recently reopened, given the COVID factor and so forth. But interesting story. I went from the NBA back in '99 over to NASCAR, and I helped open Chicagoland Speedway in Chicago, and which at the time was the northernmost speedway in the NASCAR family, and was built on the grounds of Route 66 Raceway, which to this day is still one of the top 2 drag racing facilities in the country.
Right.
But the joke back then was, that NASCAR was kind of like the redheaded stepchild of sports, and I had a friend, another friend and colleague who had moved from the NBA over to marketing and product over at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And at the time, and I still believe it's true, the largest sporting event in the world. In terms of attendance and so forth. And I just used to, joke with them. It's like, who's your customer? Bubba's sister's brother's aunt, kind of a thing. And then when the time came and I moved over to Chicagoland Speedway and got immersed in the demographics of who the customer is, both on the NASCAR and the Indy side, I was just blown away, that it wasn't that what you would say, back then, NASCAR was considered kind of the redneck sport, and that truly wasn't the case.
Right.
So they've got some amazing demographics in terms of, income and who their viewers are and so forth. And really became a fan. And then also became a fan for everybody who says NASCAR drivers and Indy drivers aren't athletes.
Oh my God. Yeah.
They're so mistaken.
Right. So a little fun fact at Texas Motor Speedway, the oldest guy on the track, Scott Dixon, pulled the fastest speed into turn 1, 229 miles an hour. And he was pulling 5G on his neck to the left. And he was doing that. He did that 220 times on Saturday and 248 times on Sunday.
And he's one of the veterans. He's been around for a long time. So he's not one of the younger guys doing this.
No. So what was also interesting is people say, well, why does experience matter, right? And talk about a textbook example where, there's a lot of variation. There was a lot of unplanned things. The weather was unpredictable. Absolutely. And Scott actually laid down like driving school lessons for all the up and coming, the more up and coming leaders. I mean, there's some amazing talent and
no question.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You said about the demographic, and it's funny because sometimes we overlook that when we're talking to customers. We don't realize how sophisticated they are, and particularly their knowledge. And I think one of the things for me that I've seen during COVID is, it's been a pretty bad time, but there's been some good things that have come out of it. And I think I know certainly the people I talk to, they're way more knowledgeable about more sophisticated things than they used to be. So their understanding of processes and, like me, I've had to adapt and adopt to.
Well, that's the key. The world has changed and people need to adapt. And the quicker you realize that, the quicker you move in that direction, the more successful you're going to be.
Right. And actually, I'm probably going to get killed by some of my I don't like the word pivot, even though it's used, because pivot to me indicates like a short-term thing. When you pivot, I'm all about, if you can figure out how to adapt and adopt new things, that's going to stay with you much longer than just pivoting a few times here and there.
Absolutely. Right. And good segue, into kind of today's topic in terms of adapting and adopting. I've been in marketing for almost 40 years and kind of got this pet peeve that, everybody's looking for high-end solutions to their marketing problems. And what I tend to find is that probably 98% of all the issues that companies have are tied to foundational, basic marketing 101 issues.
Yep.
You know, they're not doing the basics well, yet they're looking for a high-end solution, and you can't jump to a higher-end solution or look at alternatives until your foundation is solid. And as you and I talked before, you know, if you're building a house and you don't build a good foundation, you know, your house is going to suffer along the way.
Right.
So, you know, I've really got, you know, I appreciate the fact that, you know, as marketers, we need to keep up with new technologies. We need to learn how they work. And that's a necessity. If you don't keep up with the times, you know, that's going to come back to bite you in the butt somewhere along the way.
Right.
But that being said, you know, you get too many people who are blinded, you know, by the shiny objects, you know, and they assume, well, it's new. That means everybody must be, you know, be looking at it, be using it. And the majority of the time, that's not the case. Not to mention the fact that just because it's new, it doesn't mean that it's the appropriate tool for your business or your audience.
Right.
So, you know, I've got a number of examples, and I'll use one. Years and years ago, I did a consulting gig for Hollywood Video and Movie Gallery. Hollywood was the #2 video retailer behind Blockbuster at the time.
Right. Yeah.
And Blockbuster and Hollywood owned the primary and secondary markets, and Movie Gallery owned the tertiary markets, which was all the mom and pop. They had 5,700 mom and pop video stores. Right. They were running around the country, buying them all up, buying them all out. And then at one point, Movie Gallery purchased Hollywood Video. But long story short, on my first visit, they were in the middle of nowhere in Alabama. Remember flying into Atlanta and thinking, oh my gosh, how many more hours do I need to drive to get there? And I sat there, in a meeting with the CEO and the COO with kind of the same statement I made before, you know, business is down, we need high-end marketing solutions, so forth. And so, you know, the first thing I suggested was that I go on a tour of stores, and they suggested the markets, one of which was Fresno, one of which was Northern Arizona. And as I started visiting the stores, I found the same thing. I would walk in the front door, and every door had a doorbell. So you get, you know, ding dong. And invariably I walk in and they're short staffed. So there's the manager. I remember the first time I went in, there's the manager sitting on the counter, kid in his 20s, and he's texting. Doesn't greet me, nothing. I walk into the store. I wander around the store for 20 minutes. Okay, I come to the counter, and he's annoyed because he now has to get off the counter, has to stop texting, you know, and I sign up for a membership, and I take out a movie. I rent a movie, and that was it. There was no conversation. There was no nothing. There was nothing. Yeah. So following my trip and seeing this far too often, I went down and sat down as a recap with the CEO and COO. And I said, you know, I told them, I said, you don't need high-end solutions. You need marketing 101. Right. And they were totally lost. And I asked them, when's the last time you were in a store? And they're like, well, we have a store on campus. I'm like, no, that doesn't count. Right. You can walk in any minute. When's the last time you were in a real store? And they weren't getting it. So I use the example. I use McDonald's as an example. So what happens every time you walk in the door of McDonald's, no matter what McDonald's you walk into? Somebody says, welcome to McDonald's. It could be the person sweeping the floors. Yep. It could be people behind the counter. No matter how many people are in line, you hear welcome to McDonald's. Great. You come, so I come in the doorbell, I come in the store, the doorbell rings, you know I'm in the store, and nothing. Go to the counter, you place your order. First thing they asked back then was, do you want to supersize it? So upsell. I come to the counter with my movie, and so I'm surrounded by candy and popcorn and sodas. That should be an automatic for you to upsell me on something to go with my movie. Yeah. You know, next thing your order comes and they say, thank you for coming to McDonald's. Yeah. You know, so I said, and you take that a step further in the video rental business at the time, where the board behind the cash wrap listed upcoming movies next week, next month, so forth. So the next step is a reminder that, hey, don't forget, this is coming out, you know, come back and see us next week. Right. And they sat there just dumbfounded. And I said, none of this is happening in your stores. And essentially, I put together a plan and put together processes, because there wasn't a training manual, there wasn't anything, no uniforms, no nothing, and put that process together, put that programming together. That turned their business around by 42% within 4 months.
Awesome.
Just with basic things like greeting people as they come in the door, getting out behind the cash register and mingling with people and interacting and so forth. So, you know, the marketing basics really make the world go round, and truly, I believe, solve the bulk of your issues.
Yeah.
You know, beyond that, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say it's staggering to me that, you know, I always try and tell people that business is pretty simple if you stand back and really analyze what I call the macro processes. And if you're in the service business, it comes down to people helping people get delighted in some way by usually a service that's provided. Yep. And if you're in the product business, it's, you know, make sure you're the product of the process that you have to, you know, give people repeatable, high quality, on-time product. And
well, it's all about customer experience. And it's funny that you see customer experience kind of being the marquee thing out there these days. And, you know, they're positioning it as new and shiny, but it's always been about customer experience as far back as you and I go to the beginning of our careers.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, and I've seen the phrase coined, and it's right for at least our up and coming leaders to be reminded of this. But, you know, people don't remember really what you say. They remember how you made them feel.
Correct.
And they also remember what you look like, even if they don't remember your name, hence the guy in the blue shirt, right?
There you go.
So, yeah, so it's very strange to me. And people get so off on a tangent with the tools. You know, they get so excited about the tools that they lose sight of the fact that it's just a tool to help you adopt and adapt and be the best person you can be if you're in service, and be the best process you can be if you're into product.
Right. So, you know, and speaking of, you know, tools, you know, today you've got this huge focus on digital marketing tools.
Right.
And rightly so, because those tools, that digital marketing hits people within their daily lives on a regular basis. You know, we're cell phone based, we're computer based, we're at home, you know, we live, breathe, and eat everything and consume everything from our computers and phones. But that being said, the traditional marketing tools, you know, the things that you see, and you still see today, but, you know, broadcast, TV, radio, print, magazines, newspaper, outdoor, billboards, flyers, direct mail, postcards, catalogs, point of sale, promotional, you know, retail and so forth. Those things are still incredibly important, and for a number of reasons. Number one, your audience still consumes, you know, those offline advertising and promotional areas. You know, they're at home watching TV, they're listening to the radios in their cars, they're seeing billboards as they drive by. Mailboxes are particularly empty these days, which has made direct mail, you know, popular again. But the key is that while everybody kind of looks at those items as old fashioned, you know, they've been kind of retooled, you know, to fit today's market, to work better for today's market. And when you think about it, you know, I mean, the Super Bowl is probably a great example. You know, how many TV commercials, you know, half the people probably watch the Super Bowl just for the commercials. Versus the game. And how many commercials have you seen over the years that really tug on your heartstrings and have an impact and so forth? And people remember the brands, become loyal to those brands because they fit their values and so forth. So those tools really need to be, you know, meshed in, you know, in terms of finding the right medium, and you know, getting the right marketing message across, but looking at your target audience and seeing where they live, and looking at the opportunity to hit them in a number of areas. And I think that's becoming a little more important on the traditional side these days, because you've got what's been coined Zoom burnout, you know, where people are just so tired of being online and you know, so forth. That's what's made Clubhouse so popular recently,
Right.
because you don't have to be on video. You know,
Right.
you can just be sitting there on your phone. But you know, so that makes, I think, that scenario makes those traditional tools more important as well.
Right. So talking about real traditional tools, let me grab something. Never forget the good old thank you card. Right?
Oh, so important. One of my favorite things.
Important. So I got this from Rene Ferrier. So I didn't know this was going to come up. So shout out to Rene and Gracie, if you're on, you know his name. So tag him in here. And Rene and Gracie and 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 and I, we just finished doing a visual branding shoot with him. So talk about a great combination, right? Use the digital tools, use the in-person tools. He had a wonderful pre-planning, you know, good old-fashioned pre-planning plan, like understand what the customer wanted. He asked lots of questions, and then he followed up with a thank you in hand, you know, handwritten card. And
Yeah.
And you and I both love Tisha Maria Pelletier. Tisha Maria is really good at this, and so is Gracie.
And you know, Ruth, I guess, mentioned something. I think it's Ruth, about people need to be more friendly, be more human. You know, that's a big call today, human to human marketing, you know, and it incredibly important when you look at your content marketing, when you look at your messaging, okay, it's all about being authentic. It's all about being real. And that's where you connect with people. They don't want to be sold to. They want to hear stories. They want to, you know, that's how they want to make their connection. And that all plays into, you know, that customer journey of awareness, consideration, decision, loyalty, you know, that you've got to, you know, sit down and understand your audience, your demographic, not only seeing where they live, applying the proper marketing tools, digital or traditional, but then also applying the proper messaging, you know, so they don't feel like they're being sold out and they connect with your brand and so forth.
Yeah. My mom, she's not with us anymore, but my mom always used to say to me, she didn't call me Bruce, she used to call me boy. She used to say, boy, remember it's horses for courses. And I didn't understand what that meant. And, you know, I'm a self-propelled, I guess, marketeer, and I've never done a marketing course in my life. But the more I remember that, horses for courses, it's all about, you know, make sure that you're helping people with the right people and strong processes to solve the problem or deliver the solution that they're supposed to be doing, and forget all the other junk. Right. The rest.
Well, that's it. And, you know, a good example, I worked for a technology manufacturing company a couple of years ago, and we were rebuilding I was in the process of rebuilding the website, and the previous website had instant messenger. Now, this is before, you know, so this is 4 or 5 years ago. So this is before kind of the bots came into play.
Right. Sure.
And so they had an instant messenger, you know, and I said, well, I'm getting rid of it. And, you know, interesting conversations with the C-level, you know, who all think they know what they're doing. It's like you've hired a marketing team that specializes in this, but you don't listen to the marketing team who specializes in this. Right. So, but they're like, no, we have to keep the instant messaging. You know, we get a ton of contact and feedback and so forth. And so, you know, I dug into it and the company we were using. And the thing was that we were a worldwide company. We had major we had major clients in Japan and Korea and all over Europe and all over the world. And but we were here in Arizona. So the instant messenger was manned, quote unquote. and man, when I think of manned on something like an instant messenger, I'm thinking, okay, you've got you got a half a dozen people who are catching every message as it comes in. You know, we had an inside sales team that was like, oh, well, 4.5 hours from now, when I get a quick break, I'll take a peek at the instant messenger. But it was only manned from like 8 to 5 Arizona time. You know, and I'm like, you can't leave that instant messenger up there because it's creating more problems than it's worth. Right. You know, kind of a thing. So, you know, that's a great example of understanding who your customer is. If all your customers are in Arizona, then 8 to 5 may work.
Right.
But on a worldwide customer with all the time zones and everything, you look foolish. You look unprepared. You look like you don't care about the business. So, that's a great example. And then another one, recently worked in did consulting work in the behavioral health industry. And with in-person therapy, outpatient clinics, et cetera. And we had a outpatient clinic in the Maryland area that was the longest standing clinic, and marketing direction, in normal times, non-pandemic times, would be looking at, we catered to kids from age 12, 13 to about 31. So inevitably, the parents are bringing the kids to the sessions in most cases. So you need to look at the propensity for people to travel. Parents got to pick up the kid from school, fight traffic, leave work, get there, so forth. So, in that Maryland clinic, we'd look at normal marketing. We'd look at about a 17-mile radius because it's just outside of Washington, D.C. Traffic is crazy. 17 miles could take you 30 minutes to an hour. And so it makes sense. But when the pandemic hit and telehealth became the thing, legally and state guideline wise, we were allowed to market to the entire state. And it made sense to market to the state because you're online. Okay. And you're using Zoom to have sessions. So it allows you to expand your territory, so to speak. Well, upper management is like, no, we have to stay within 17 miles. and it's just like, but number one, you don't know when the pandemic's going to end, Number two, and be able to do in person. Number two, why would you go from a statewide audience and demographic to a 17-mile? And it was just, we had this phenomenal digital team who really had their finger on the pulse of what was going on, could really, their targeting capabilities were amazing. The tools available to target are amazing. Yet upper management just provided this major roadblock to success and just couldn't get out of their own way, to kind of look at what else is out there. We also had an example where we opened a new clinic in Atlanta, and again, all the focus is on digital marketing tools. But you've got a situation, you can imagine. So these services are not inexpensive. They could cost you $100,000 over the course of the year. So we've got a higher end demographic that can afford these services. They're not always covered by insurance. So now when you look to the traditional marketing side, it's like, okay, a glossy high-end magazine that can be found in doctor's offices, in various cities around the country. You've got like, here we have Phoenix Magazine. In other cities, you've got a similar thing. And it's like, that magazine hits that demographic due to service costs and so forth. It's found on newsstands. It's found in doctors' offices. We also looked at, parenting magazines, where when I grew up, the big magazine you saw in doctors' offices for kids was Highlights magazine. But now you have parenting magazines, and so another angle to do print or direct mail. One of the big no-nos in marketing is buying mailing lists. But if you can, because they're just, you never know what you're getting. But I went out and I bought a mailing list from the American Medical Association within specific zip codes of that Atlanta clinic, and identified medical professions that were referral points to us. So if you think family physician, if you think, pediatrician, et cetera, and then did direct mail to those doctors. And I just happen to know from past that someone like the American Medical Association keeps a very clean list. So it made sense from a targeting standpoint. But here's a traditional item that is very targeted to go along with all the digital marketing that we're doing that helps the cause. So,
well, I just want to give a shout out, Wendy Boyles, as she was a very loyal fan, and she got back to work. And I know she's standing up 10 to 12 hours a day. So for her to hop on after her 12-hour shift, thank you, Wendy. And Gracie, love all the commentary. And Lewis was on earlier. He went by. So we're kind of coming up to our wrap-up point, Nat. And so what would you say is probably the #1 tip that would be really a good cause for processing over, for somebody to think about, just think about stepping back and maybe taking a look at one thing, and then we'll let people find out how to get a hold of you.
I think the key is, as you mentioned, stepping back and looking at and understanding your audience, and then having an open mind to all of the tools that are available and at your disposal. Right. And how those different tools hit that audience. Yeah. So I think that's the key. Right. As far as getting in touch with me, as it says in my little name tag here, my consulting business is Vendara Group. I can be found at www.vendaragroup.com. Mm-hmm. And again, I specialize in strategy, marketing, branding, events, corporate sponsorship, and am open to helping whomever I can. Yep,
you're in the people helping people business, right?
I very much am.
Or you were in the horses for courses, if it's the right product for the right process, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I find it amazing that businesses are so alike than they are disalike, and people get they get whacked out that they think they're so special, but most businesses are about 80 or 90% absolutely identical. So
well, and it's interesting to me, I always tell people there isn't an industry in the country that doesn't have to market themselves, and right. On your side of the world, there isn't an industry in the country that doesn't work using processes.
Right.
Everybody uses processes, so we touch on everything.
We do. Indeed, we do. So we are very lucky. So with our 86 years of experience, if you're watching, thank you. If you're on live stream with us, if you're watching this as a replay, if you could put #replay before asking a question or making a comment, that will help Nat and I go through the comments afterwards. And I give a commitment to my live guests and to myself that I will go back and review all the comments and any questions up to a few days afterwards. So thanks, Nat. I'm so glad I met you through Tisha Maria Pelletier indirectly. And she is such an awesome sister to me. It's amazing. So
she is. Thank you for having me. Thank you to everyone for attending. I will also be checking comments, so feel free to leave them. And I look forward to maybe doing this again sometime.
Yeah, sure. We could maybe do fast forward to fall time, see how we've adapted and adopted and maybe fallen over a few times, right?
Absolutely.
All right, great stuff. If you'd hang for a minute, it would be awesome.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.